Senator Mike Crapo, you're back, sir. How are you?
I am well. Good to be with you.
Good to have you back. So,
Yeah.
Listen, the big, beautiful bill, there's a lot. It's big.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think it's beautiful. Talk to me about it.
Well, first of all, I want to get rid of some of the false information that's been put out about it. I think almost everybody who's read anything about the One Big Beautiful Bill saw some story in the legacy media that says that it was going to increase the deficit by about $3 to $4 trillion, depending on the news outlet. The reality is that it reduces the deficit by $366 billion and includes $1.2 trillion of spending reduction of waste, fraud, and abuse in our entitlement system, the first most major step toward reforming our entitlement system that is what is driving us into debt in this country. And I want to explain, sorry to go long here, I want to explain why the difference between $366 billion of deficit reduction and $3 trillion of deficit increase. How do they get there? They get there because we refused to let the 2017 TCJA Tax Act expire. If that tax act had expired, it would have increased taxes across America by $4.3 trillion. And it's not just on billionaires, like the attackers said. It was $2.6 trillion of that was on people making less than $200,000 a year, and most of it was people making less than $100,000 a year. And they are saying that because we did not raise taxes on America by $4.3 trillion, that we caused a deficit increase. I think most Idahoans get that.
Okay, so let me just break this down. So essentially what you're saying is we had a tax bill from 2017. We just didn't let it expire, and they had factored in the additional proposed earned revenue that we would have got had it been expired. So they're like, well, you're not letting us get this revenue that we theoretically would get if this expired. Therefore, you're costing us $4 trillion.
You said it better than I did. And by the way, back in 2012, President Obama was president. We had the same situation, only it was President Bush tax cuts that were expiring. And guess what President Obama said? He said, we don't have to count this as increasing the deficit. It's just keeping the tax law right where it is. No more, no less revenue. It's exactly where the revenue is, and that's not increasing the deficit. But the attackers seem to have changed from 2012 to now because they don't like President Trump.
I remember that with Obama. I remember that because we, my wife and I are self-employed, always been self-employed.
Yeah.
And we would have a tutoring appointment. It's like, oh my gosh, I really don't want to go to this tutoring appointment. So you make like $100 or something.
Yeah.
The way we always forced ourselves to go is by saying, if you don't go, it's like spending $100 because we stood to earn $100, but that wasn't actually us spending money. It was just like, it wasn't money that existed. That's right. That's right. So that's essentially the same thing, which is you're counting money that you theoretically would have gone, and then you're actually counting that against the concept.
Yeah. I actually put it this way also to people. I said, how many of you believe that the refusal to raise taxes is equal to actually cutting spending? How many think that raising taxes and cutting spending are the same thing? It's not. The way we need to control our deficit is to cut spending, not to raise more taxes.
You know, I interviewed a professor in one of the college systems in Idaho, and he told me that exact thing. He told me it was raising it by $4 trillion. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. And he's like, no, it is. And we kind of went back and forth. Again, I didn't have the nuance and understanding of the little details that you did.
Yeah, well, he was telling you that you needed to pony up. That's some money out of your pocket. Do you know what that meant to the average Idaho family? If we had let those tax cuts expire, $2,400 to every family in Idaho. That's the average family. And on top of that, now let's get on to the rest of the OBBB. And on top of that, we gave tax relief. So we did not raise taxes, and then we gave tax relief. And we gave huge business tax relief that is going to create capital formation across America and generate more jobs, more revenue, lower unemployment, and to really boost returns on those who are trying to save a little bit for their retirement. In addition to that, as you know, no tax on tips, no tax on car insurance, no tax. Look at our farmers. They can buy their machinery now and depreciate it in the year they buy it rather than taking 10 or 20 years to depreciate it. all kinds of tax relief was put into place that is making it so that the actual tax savings is way beyond that $2,400 possible tax increase. And most people are getting a tax cut. In fact, the average family gets a $31,500 exemption. That's a boost by $1,500 over what it is right now. And for small businesses, they get a 20% tax deduction. That was expiring. We saved that and boosted it. Or actually, we didn't boost that one. We just saved that tax cut. But there's tons of tax relief in this bill that are helping to boost the economy. And that's why you see the markets right now just as strong as they've been for a long time.
Thank you for all that, by the way. The no tax on tips is one of those things that, like, believe it or not, I worked at Applebee's for not America's finest restaurant, but I did work there when I was like 18, right? And when I would go in as a server, I would go in and like record how much money somebody paid me. And if it wasn't at a threshold, they assumed that I had gotten a 10 or 15 or 20% tip, whatever it was. Right. So when I was trying to put in how much the person left, if it was beneath that threshold, I had to get like a manager override because they're like, no, we don't believe, because we want the tax revenue from your tips. That's how it was explained to me as an 18-year-old. I was like, wow, man, that's wild. It's like the federal government is in here in Applebee's with me with the bad music and terrible breadsticks. And they're like,
That's exactly right. And many people might think, oh, well, that's just tax on tips. I don't work for tips.
But a lot of people do.
A lot of people do. And I just talked in the last couple of days to some business owners who in the service industry, and they said this is helping us so much with our employees because all of that gobbledygook that you were talking about, we don't have to do anymore. We can hire people more effectively. We can hire more people. And it's really been a big boost.
And it's an effective boost to the service industry now. Industry. Classically, the service industry, when you're dealing with servers and hosts and cooks that, pool tips, when you're dealing with those people, you're dealing with, I don't want to, like, not in a derogatory sense, but you're dealing with kind of the lower, predominantly the lower tier of employment anyway.
Right.
And it makes it more difficult for employers then to keep those people and retain them. So they constantly have this turnover and training, essentially line item in their budget where they're like, okay, we're only going to retain people because they're not making that much money.
That's right.
And in effect, removing that boosts that income for those people. So the business owners who are offering employment are like, okay, well, we effectively are now paying them more because less gets taken out of their paycheck.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I also knew a gal, not that you care, but I knew a gal named Shelly who worked at Applebee's with me. She was actually a mom. She was like 40 years old. She had a job working in investment, but she worked at Applebee's on the weekends. The problem that you would run into, and I didn't understand this at the time, but the problem you would run into is those dollars that she got working at Applebee's, they would have been taxed on top of her salary.
So at the highest rate.
That's right. So here she's working like an evening or Friday, Saturday night, trying to make extra money. And she was a single mom, and that was getting taxed extra. But now under the big, beautiful bill, right? Like obviously that money that she made from tips would not be taxed at the highest rate. So that's like a double boom for her and helps her save even more.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
God bless it, man. That's great.
Well, the one big beautiful bill was just packed with things that, of course, nobody focused on because, like I said, the legacy media just want to say that we are cutting Medicaid for people and we are trying to give a tax break to billionaires. By the way, the billionaires did not get a tax break in this bill. The only thing that billionaires got out of this bill was we didn't we let the 2017 tax policy stay where it is, so they didn't get a tax increase. But, the bottom line here is the politics of this bill has been phenomenal in terms of the misinformation that's being put out about it. There were so many other things that went on in this bill. And like I said, it was the first major effort to start reforming the entitlement system itself, which is the cause. The uncontrolled growth in our entitlement system is the cause of our spiraling national debt.
Well, okay. Real fast. You've brought up now twice the legacy media. I had this experience this morning. There's obviously a very well-known criminal case that Idaho just experienced in the last couple of weeks with, judgment coming out, murder case, the whole big terrible thing. And there has been a fictitious video portraying this individual in an 80-county jail. And it's getting shared all over the place. And the Daily Mail actually shared it this morning saying like, this is a video from this, horrible person in his jail cell. Meanwhile, Ada County Sheriff is telling everybody, like, this is not a video of our jail cell. This is not real. They're like, our jail cells don't look like, we can confirm conclusively this is fake. And then you have these international media sources sharing around this image. Like, what do you guys, like, we can give you no better example of why people aren't 100% faithful in your system.
Why they don't trust that. I mean, the same kind of example happened to Israel recently when there were photographs of starving children that were not people. They were in Gaza, but it was a child who had a childhood disease that child was born with, and there was a healthy child standing in the background that they didn't notice in the picture that they published. You know, it was very interesting as they try to create the impression that it's Israel that is depriving the children in Gaza of food, when it is really Hamas who is depriving the children in Israel of food in order to take that food for their own army.
Staying on the topic of entitlement, there are a lot of people that are concerned with healthcare in particular. I know a lot of people in the healthcare industry, you know, have been telling me recently, they're like, hey, look, we're going to have like 30,000 Idahoans without healthcare. What could we understand about the bill and what actually is going to happen?
Well, again, I appreciate that question.
Yes.
The bottom line is the only part of our entitlement system that we were able to touch in this bill was Medicaid, where it is rife with waste, fraud, and abuse. And what we touched was that. Let me give you some examples.
Please, yeah.
We did deprive certain categories of people of access to Medicaid. One, people who are not legally in the United States and are not American citizens. Two, people who are registered in multiple states, getting payments from multiple states. Three, people who have deceased and who are still on the records. And believe me, some of those are checks going out. We don't know exactly who's picking those checks up. For those who refuse to work, we did put a work requirement in place. And I shouldn't have used the word refused. They say that a lot of people, it's not a huge number for the whole population, but probably 1 or 2, maybe 3 million at the most people may leave Medicaid because of the work requirement we put into place. That work requirement requires that a person have 20 hours of work a week to qualify for Medicaid. And if they don't have a job or want a job, they can do community service or they can get an education and get the same qualification. And many people will do that in order to stay on Medicaid. They will go get a job. Many of those people will leave Medicaid because when they get their job, they will get health insurance. But they're counted in that number. And in addition, there are some who just won't work. And frankly, that's their choice. But usually they make that choice because they have found another part of the exchange or another part of the system where they can get their health coverage. So there's a lot of nuances here in what we are talking about. And by the way, let me just tell you one more thing. It was President Obama and the Republican Congress in the 1990s that first put a work requirement onto our welfare system.
President Clinton?
Yeah, did I say Obama?
Yeah, it's fine. I know what you mean. Clinton. President, because I remember that as well.
It was Bill Clinton and the Republican Congress. And when we did that, by the way, I think he vetoed the bill once or twice, and then we finally got it done and he signed it. We had phenomenal numbers of people who went into the workforce. And not only did it reduce the cost to our welfare system, but it reduced poverty. It was a phenomenal, I think poverty hit its lowest level in years because people got out of poverty by getting that job. So there's really big benefits to this whole program, but that's what we're being attacked for, is putting work requirements in, stopping those who are illegally here from getting their benefits, stopping people from being registered in multiple states. And the other thing we did was we required that the states check people's qualifications for the program every 6 months instead of every 12 months, because a lot of people get to a point where they no longer qualify, but they stay on for an extra 6 months because they don't get picked up until the end of a year. And that saves phenomenally a lot of money on people who don't qualify anymore, but haven't been checked out and removed from the records.
Right. And that's not that quite literally is just like, no, we're just going to make sure you still qualify. And if you do, it's no problem at all. So you're not in effect, you're not kicking anybody out at all with that last requirement. It's no. We're just making sure every 6 months that our rules are accurate. Like and if you do still qualify, then bully for you.
Yeah.
A question for you. When you were saying people that are not U.S. citizens and here illegally, this is that's an and, right?
Yeah.
Right. So like this is a really important thing because you could have somebody here that's not a U.S. citizen. Maybe they're just here visiting. Maybe and they could potentially be covered under whatever the program is. You're not modifying it.
Yeah. If they have a green card, if they are here legally, but not yet a citizen, or literally they're just here on a green card and not even applying for citizen, our law allows them to qualify for Medicaid. There's people who don't believe they should until they are a citizen.
Sure.
But that's not what our bill did. Our bill said you had to not be a citizen and not qualified. I mean, not be a citizen and not be legally here.
Now, this is talking about able-bodied individual rights. So like say I'm on Medicaid, and I don't know all the nuances, but say I'm on Medicaid and I'm disabled for some reason.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, listen, I can't do online school. I can't do volunteering of any sort. I can't work. Then I theoretically qualify under some different government program, right? Because I think the articulation from a lot of people is like, what about the people that are disabled that can't go out and volunteer or something like that?
It's a very good question. The work requirement applies only to able-bodied individuals who are not disabled and who don't have a child in the home of, I can't remember the age, 13 or 15 or something like that. So they don't have a child they need to care for. They are not disabled and they are able-bodied. Everybody else doesn't have to comply with the work requirement.
Okay, so if you're a single parent with a 12-year-old, then it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't even affect you.
Yeah, you can stay home and take care of your child.
Gosh, that's great. Are there any other? I mean, again, I know I would be setting you up for something negative, but are there other big concerns? Because that's a lot of the concerns I've heard from people.
One of the big concerns that we heard, and we did take care of in the bill, was seasonal work. For example, Alaska, a lot of people in Alaska work seasonally in the fishing industry or what have you. And so they do have a job and they do work, but they have large periods of time when they are not at work. And so we gave the states, the states do run the Medicaid program, and we gave the states flexibility to deal with those dynamics so that people who are seasonal workers are still able to qualify.
This, and again, I'm sure the answer is no, but this has nothing, there was no provision, or has there been a discussion as it relates to the big, beautiful bill regarding ag labor? Because again, you have some ag labor that's seasonal, obviously, and we have that, but there's a big criticism, especially within the state of Idaho, that we're not dealing with all the ag labor needs of our industry.
No, and I'm trying to remember the details of the bill there, and frankly, I'm not remembering them specifically as to agriculture, but we did take into consideration all of the seasonal working circumstances.
Gotcha.
And let the states make flexibility to deal with these circumstances.
Gotcha.
These issues were all brought up and negotiated. We were very careful to simply get those who make a decision not to work, who are otherwise able to work, and even if they've got a seasonal job, that doesn't prohibit them from getting qualification.
Thank you for that. When we hear waste, fraud, and abuse, I spoke with Congressman Simpson about this as well. It's like the Doge, people freaked out about that.
Yeah.
They're like, oh my goodness. And you heard all of these things, that it's like, there's all this waste, fraud, and abuse. And then you also heard on the other side, oh, this is all like false. This is like junk, or we're depriving, very needed people of something, right?
Exactly.
What are examples of waste, fraud, and abuse that got eliminated under this bill? Or what are ways that you guys are identifying them more effectively?
Well, we've really gone over the ones that we did deal with. It was all in Medicaid, and it was all the kinds of things that we talked about. There are concerns about Medicare and the SNAP program, the food stamp program.
Gotcha.
We did put a work requirement on SNAP. But the problem is primarily, and I can't give you details on this because we didn't get into it in this bill, but the problem in all of our entitlement system programs is those who do not qualify, who are falsely claiming benefits,
right.
and in one way or another. And Medicare's is a little bit better because the qualifications are really obvious, and once you're 65, you get qualified, and you get engaged in the program. But there's another thing that happened, and I should have mentioned this. The states, and Idaho's not one of these states, but most of the states started gaming the system because the federal government reimburses the states for expenses of the healthcare providers that they do for Medicaid at a certain rate. The Democrats changed that rate to like 90% a few years back. It used to be 50-50. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that Republicans wanted to do is to move that percentage back to 50%, and we didn't get that all done. But the states were starting to provide something called state-designated payments. And they would charge and provider taxes. They would charge a provider tax to the companies or the hospitals and other providers. Sure. And then when the hospitals and providers paid that tax or sent them bills, they would put an extra boost on that bill and then send that bill to the federal government. And so the federal government would end up paying extra, whether it's a state-directed payment or a provider tax. And so we made reforms to both the provider tax system and the state-directed payment system. And we made it so on the state-directed payment system, we made it so the states could only get reimbursement for the Medicare cost, not for increased costs of the healthcare. And we made it so that the states had to start winding down their provider taxes to a maximum of 3.5%. Some of them are up to 6%, and they're using those provider tax revenues for other things.
Oh, so they're essentially just siphoning on, like they piggyback.
Yeah, they're piggybacking. And so that's another example of what we considered to be at least waste, if not abuse.
Fraud maybe, or abuse. It's like, I don't know what the technical
exactly.
term is, but that seems a little shifty.
Yeah, and so now...
And again, Idaho wasn't doing this.
Idaho does not have state-directed payments.
Gotcha.
They were starting to move into it, and with legitimate reason, because they were moving their system from a fee-for-service system to a Medicare Advantage, or to a Medicare Advantage
Gotcha.
type system. And in order to do that, you do need to get some state-directed payments. But we've got to work with Idaho so that they can still do their managed care rather than just have them push back into fee-for-service. I know this gets complicated.
No, I got you. Yeah.
But Idaho was doing a little of that, and they do have a provider tax, but Idaho's provider tax is 3.5%. That is the level that we didn't choose this because of Idaho. That is the level that we chose as a fair level for a provider tax. And so some of those at 6 have to ratchet down. But Idaho is right at what it should be.
Sure, and you have an administrative cost. It's like, that's fine, like 3 or 3.5%, whatever, but you don't get like 10%.
But you don't start boosting it up and then taking the gravy off.
Right. Senator, I know you have a hard stop coming up here. One more quick question. I've been doing a lot of work on power, on energy. This is a huge national problem, a huge problem for Idaho in particular, because we enjoy a low utility cost, which is very attractive to large, tech manufacturers and data centers. Was there anything in the bill that started to address research or building out or supplementing, putting like backstops on energy developers?
Yeah, there was. As you know, every single source of energy has a tax credit with it, whether it's solar or wind or nuclear or oil and gas or what have you. And there was a big battle over those tax credits. The Biden administration, as you'll recall, boosted those tax credits in a reconciliation bill for solar and wind, and that's where the electric vehicle mandate came.
Sure.
And they started reducing the tax credits for oil and gas because they wanted to drive oil and gas out of our system. So now in this bill, we of course came at it from the opposite perspective. So we boosted and protected the oil and gas credits, and we reduced those, what we consider to be those excessive enhancement of the wind and solar credits. The bottom line is we think we got where the political realities would let us get on that. In terms, I think you mentioned research. In terms of that, this was not a spending bill in that sense, because that would be,
sure.
But that would be an appropriations process, and we are boosting research, particularly in nuclear and in a number of other areas. But I personally think where we ought to end up, and we didn't get there in this bill yet, but where we ought to end up is a technology neutral tax credit policy. If you've got an energy type that you want to try to see if it can be a marketable energy source, if you can penetrate the market to 2.5%, you can get the same tax credit that any other energy source gets. And so that would put oil and gas, coal, oil, nuclear, wind, solar, all on the same level. And that's where I think we ultimately ought to get to as a country.
Gotcha. I know you have to run. Thank you for coming in today. I really appreciate you fitting into the schedule, and hopefully we can do this again.
I look forward to it. I enjoy our visits.
Yeah.